All right, next up, we're going to start working on the body of our spider guy. So what we want to do is determine what kind of geometry we want to start with, what kind of primitive. So we can look up at our polygon tab, and we've got a sphere that we could use and sort of flatten out the shape of it. We could use a cylinder if we wanted to kind of capture some of that shape. We could also use a cube. So we've got a lot of options to start with. For our example, what we want to do is get comfortable working with the geometry, moving the geometry around, adding geometry to our shape. So we're actually just going to start with a cube. So we're going to select on our cube, and then we're just going to left click and drag out the basic size of this guy. And then we'll left click and drag it up to about the height of our little guy. There we go. Now the box is kind of in the way of the image, so it makes it a little bit hard. What we can do is we can use our shading options for X-ray mode if we wanted to. It's going to take everything to a little bit of a transparency. It works for us if we want to. We can also assign a material to this instead, so that we don't have to set each one of the views. So let's go ahead and just go to our windows, to our rendering editors, to our Hypershade. I'm just going to make a new blend material, and let's go ahead and just select on our box, right click, assign to selection. We can close that out. We'll go over to our attribute editor with our box selected. We'll select on our material, and in our material, let's go ahead and set our transparency to something a little bit lighter. There we go. And I'm actually going to take my specular color all the way down too. Alright, and that way in all the views we've got a nice little transparent box to work on. Now the next thing we can do while we've got it here, we can either go through and add the geometry with our tools, or we could at least start off with some edge loops on the box. So we'll go ahead and use our options that are available to us. Go back to the let's go ahead and just go to our channel box. Excuse me, there we go. We're going to go into our polycube and our subdivisions. Let's go ahead and subdivide this guy up just a little bit. We'll do about 4 along the width. That should give us enough to start rounding out for all of these shapes along each one of these little edges. The subdivision on height, let's say somewhere around 3. And let's say somewhere around 4 on our depth. That should give us enough geometry to start to shape this guy out a little bit. Alright, now with that selected, the thing that we want to do next is we really want to focus on just one view at a time. We don't want to get distracted by going back and forth to create this shape. What we want to do is just focus in on one view. So we'll start with our front view. It's a pretty defining view for the silhouette of that shape. So I'm going to go ahead and go in here. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to go to vertex, and then while I'm in vertex, you'll notice that if I select on something, I'll do W on the keyboard to make this it's a soft selection. As I move it, you notice that everything else is moving with it. This isn't really the main way that we want to model. We want a little more accuracy, that when I select this and move it, nothing else moves. By default, if you haven't already changed it, you'll need to adjust it. So I'm going to go up to my top right and go to my tools settings panel, and with my move tool selected, I can go to my soft selection rollout and select on the soft selection and uncheck it. And that way what I select on what I move is just what I move, except for what's over here. So this has also got another property set to it. So if we go one more down, we see our symmetry options. And our symmetry options, we can turn it off, so that if I select this, only this moves, or I can select it and say the object's X, and that way I can get a little assistance if there is some symmetry in my object. And if we look at this object, there is some symmetry, so we can definitely take advantage of it, but just always be aware of it. Alright, so to get started, let's just first off make sure that we're kind of squared up with our object here. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my just move this guy over just a little bit, because we are a little bit off center. There we go. That gets us close. Maybe something we move around as we go. So all I'm looking to do is get the basic piece set in place for this part of our model. We're just selecting along that edge. There we go. And that gives us that basic shape all the way around, and that's what we're looking for. Now we have moved some of these around, so we can transfer these down just a little bit, and that'll help us to balance out those edge loops that go around. We'll see that as we continue on. Now that we've got the front knocked out, let's get to another view. Let's say our top view over here. We'll jump in on this one.